Welcome to the True You Summit. I'm Carrie Rubin, your summit host and Chief Mom Officer at the Modern Mom Society. I'm excited to bring you this summit to help you get the tools you need to live an authentic and joyful mom life that's aligned to what your body, soul, and mind desires. I hope you enjoyed this limited time free interview with one of the 15 experts that are here to discuss how you can get closer to your true you. Each day of the summit, we will explore 5 different areas of your life where you can improve your connection to your true you as a busy mom. Parenting, mom life, authenticity, spirituality, and mind and body. You'll have 24 hours free access to listen to the 3 experts discussing the topic of the day. Otherwise, you can purchase lifetime access to these life-changing series of interviews. There are 2 different packages available. The basic package, which includes all 15 interviews in MP3 format, can be purchased for $29, or the deluxe package, which includes all 15 interviews in audio, video, and transcript format, so you can get this great information whichever way you prefer. Plus, the deluxe package also includes bonus PDFs. One is the How to Connect to Your True You guide. It highlights the ways that the experts shared in their interview as to how they personally connect to their true selves, as well as the common ideas and themes throughout. So if you're new to connecting to your true you, or you're out of practice, you can start trying on these different ways of getting in tune with your inner wisdom, intuition, and true self right away. The second bonus PDF is Key Takeaways from the Summit. As I was recording all of these interviews, I noticed common themes and threads throughout. And this bonus document highlights these keys, so you'll be sure to get the most important ideas and begin to make shifts towards a happier, joyful, more aligned, and more fulfilled mom life today. The $29 and $59 prices for the basic and deluxe packages are good now through the end of the summit on May 10th. After that, the prices will go up to $59 and $89 respectively. So if you think you're going to miss any of these great interviews, or you'll know you want to have lifetime access to them, be sure to grab your True You Summit package upgrade today. Here's today's interview. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, and welcome to the True You Summit presented by the Modern Mom Society. I'm Carrie Rubin, your summit host and Chief Mom Officer at the Modern Mom Society. I'm excited to bring you this summit to help you get the tools you need to live an authentic and joyful mom life that is aligned to what your body, soul, and mind desires. Today's expert is Steph Sterner. Steph is an inspirational speaker, teacher, and coach who helps people navigate challenging relationships without sacrificing their own needs. She is the author of No Guilt, No Games, No Drama, The 7 Keys to Smarter Boundaries, and other books about setting boundaries gracefully with the people who matter most. Boundary setting is so huge in our lives as moms, isn't it? Setting boundaries for our kids, setting boundaries around our time, setting boundaries around how others treat us and our children. But sometimes it can be really challenging to set and enforce them, can't it? I was really grateful to have stumbled upon Steph and the work that she does, because her entire focus on her work is helping others create healthy boundaries, and she has really great advice as to how to navigate these sometimes tricky waters. We discuss how and why boundaries are important, why it's so hard for us to do, and what to do if someone isn't respecting the boundary that we've set. You ready? Here's the interview. Welcome to the True You Summit, Steph. I am so excited to have you here because boundaries is a hot topic, and especially for me because I have a hard time holding them as a people pleaser.
I can relate, Carrie, because I've been there and on occasion still go there. So absolutely, absolutely, I relate.
Yeah, and I was so thrilled to have found you because you are all about boundaries. Your whole body of work is around boundaries. So can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you became to focus on boundaries?
I'll be happy to. I've been a people pleaser for most of my life. As a kid, it was very easy to manipulate me into doing things because I wanted people to like me. Mm-hmm. I think part of it was because I'm an introvert and I was quite intelligent. And so like in school, I was accused of being stuck up. Mm-hmm. I wasn't, but it made it hard. And I really wanted to be liked. But also I think it's just my nature. I don't like to disappoint people. And, conflict is hard for me. So somebody puts the pressure on and they'd get me to do things. And in my life, I've done things that really, I should not have done. They were wrong for me, absolutely wrong for me. And, there's no moment for me when I can remember deciding to go into boundaries work or kind of like it started to happen. I was doing personal growth work, including stress and different things like that. And all I remember really is when I gave a talk on boundaries, and the people I spoke to just ate it up, and they wanted to know, how do you handle this? What do you say here? What do you do? And so it just seemed like it was a really, like that was getting people excited. But I was forgetting that actually we teach what we need to learn. And really, for me, the reason is because it was such a hard one for me. And I'd like to save people some of that trouble if I can,
Yes.
I just like to make it easier. I mean, I can't do it for them, but, I can make it easier. And that's really what I want, is to help people. And actually, when I talk about setting boundaries, the whole purpose of it is to be true to yourself. That's my thing, is to help people to be true to themselves. And there are, of course, other ways, but if you don't set boundaries, you can't consistently be true to yourself.
Right.
That's
Totally. Yeah. If you're a people pleaser and you end up just bending to other people's desires, that's not in alignment, and that feels kind of icky,
It does. And yeah.
So why is it so hard for us to hold those boundaries when we know it's not in alignment and doesn't feel good in the end?
Yeah, because I think the people it's hardest for are the ones like me who really, we want to be liked. And one of the things is we want to be liked, and we want to think of ourselves as good people. Okay. And as women, we are socialized to be polite and nice and to look after others before ourselves. Okay. Yeah, I know there's all these wonderful things going on in the world, and they have been for quite a while, that women are becoming more, more independent and stronger and all of this. But we are still socialized to look after everyone. It's like we're supposed to be mothers to everyone, not just to kids, So I think it's hard, and also that's where we get a lot of our acknowledgement from. When you do what people want, they say nice things. Oh, they're so grateful. They love you. They whatever, right?
Yeah.
And those things feel good, right? But then sticking up for yourself doesn't feel good in the moment. But it usually feels good afterwards, because, in the short term, it can feel really good to give people what they want. But in the long term, it's awful. When you do that, it's your own expense. You do not feel good about yourself. Okay? You feel, whether you feel like a fake or a pushover or whatever label you put on yourself, okay, you do not feel good about yourself. And the thing is, we want to be liked, and we want to feel like good people, and we forget that there can be a conflict there. We confuse like and respect. We confuse being nice with being good, yet they're not the same thing. Good people make hard choices, and that doesn't always make them popular. And, we want to be popular. We want to be liked. So it's very hard to give up. It's like an instant gratification thing. You can compare it almost to dieting, like you want that chocolate cake. It feels really good when it's in your mouth. And,
yes.
But once it's gone, you're stuck with the consequences, right? And it's the same thing. It's really the same thing, the short term versus the longer term.
Yeah. I mean, especially in our instant gratification society, it's so you want to go for that quick hit as opposed to what is going to be better for you in the long run. So I'm curious, how do we know where we should be setting our boundaries, and how do we know what is in alignment and where those lines should be drawn?
The best indicator we've got is our gut. Okay, so when something feels wrong, something's wrong. Now, yes, sometimes the something isn't what you thought. Maybe, it could just be that you're nervous about something, you got issues going. But the best indicator that that it's time to set a boundary, that there's something going on, is the way you feel. Okay, it's that discomfort, that I don't like this. Oh, and you're feeling pushed. When you feel like you're being pushed into something, it doesn't feel like you're not flowing into it. You're kind of forced. Okay, that's when it's time to take a deep breath, or a few of them, and maybe just as simple as, let me get back to you on this, or you know what, I need to get going. Can I call you in a few minutes? Or talk to you tomorrow, or whatever it is. But that's the best indicator, is your gut, that something's wrong, that you're uncomfortable. Because if you do something that violates your values, you don't feel good. Okay, and if something doesn't violate your values, then you may not need a boundary. That's actually, it's all about what's important to us. It's not like there's some recipe, you should do this, you shouldn't do this, you should allow this, you should allow that, because everybody's different. But when you don't feel good about it, when you don't feel good about it, that means it's probably time to set a boundary. Another time is when you're taking on someone else's responsibilities, and you're either doing it for too long or repeatedly. Okay, so if you're taking on someone's responsibilities for anything other than a crisis that they didn't create themselves, there's times, obviously, to take on other people's responsibilities, someone in the family or your good friend, somebody's sick and they need someone to help with the kids, and it's fine. There's plenty of times when it's appropriate. But when you're enabling them to be irresponsible, okay, when they're not changing, they're not taking responsibility for themselves, okay, then it's time to set a boundary, because you're disrespecting yourself. Whenever you do something that isn't right for you, or that makes someone too much more important than you, there's times when people are more important, someone else is more important. There should be, or else what an awful life, but whenever we do that, when we disrespect ourselves like that, that's that, then you've got the long-term problem. Well, it doesn't feel good in the moment either, but you've got that long-term problem. If you treat yourself that way, A, how are other people going to treat you? People don't respect you if you don't respect yourself. And B, how are you going to feel about yourself? You don't feel good about yourself because you're a nice person, but you're not being strong, which is part of that good person thing. Good people, sometimes have to do difficult things. Oh.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you think of any examples off the top of your head of the latter where you need to hold a boundary with somebody in a extenuating circumstance? Can you think of any examples?
When you say extenuating,
just like a one-off kind of a situation as opposed to repeated.
When I would set a boundary for a one-off? First of all, if it puts me in a position to do something that's not right for me, so someone asks me to lie and I don't feel comfortable lying, they can say, oh, it's just a little white lie. But I don't feel comfortable lying. I'm sorry. If you need someone to lie, it's going to have to be someone else. That's my boundary. It's my boundary isn't that you mustn't ask me. That's fine. But my boundary is I'm not going to lie for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And other one-offs can be when it can be to respect your time. I'm sorry, but I would do this for you if I had the time or at another time, but I can't do it right now. So if you need it right now, I'm sorry, but I have to say no.
Yeah.
I think I'm sorry is optional depending on who you're dealing with, but
right.
But it's really, the one-offs are they still end up being a lot about respecting yourself or your family or whatever, but what's important to you, basically. And another one-off would be loaning money to somebody that, when either you don't think you're going to get it back, or you just don't feel comfortable and you don't know why. Okay, but if you don't want to loan money to someone, that's another one. They may never have asked for it before, but just because they've never asked before, it doesn't mean you have to give it to them. So there's a lot of one-offs, actually.
Yeah. I think more often there are those repeated boundaries that get pushed, especially on time for mothers. So what if you decide, I'm no longer comfortable giving my time to XYZ, and you create that boundary and you've set the expectation that boundary, that boundary doesn't exist. So what do you do with people who push back on the boundaries that you create?
So let's say that I was on a committee or volunteered for something, right? And I said, I can't do it anymore. And I'm getting phone calls now. Oh, we've got this problem. We've got that problem. Right? When they say that, when they call and ask for that help anyway, oh, won't you please? Then an appropriate answer is, Ashley, I'm sorry, but I've explained to you, I've explained to you that I can't do that. And I understand that you're in a tough position, but I need to be here for myself and my family, or just my family, whatever. Or just I'm too busy. You don't even have to give a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't do this, and I'm sorry, but that's how it is. You're going to have to. The other thing is, you can say to someone, if it's someone who's a bit insecure, you say, I really, you know what, I have faith in you. You can handle this without me. That's a really nice one, because it isn't so much now about me. I'm saying, okay, you know what, I have faith in your ability. You can handle this. You know, you're smarter or stronger or whatever, more so than you think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can handle it. You don't need me. And if they keep calling, well, you know, we've got voicemail for a reason. You know, I mean, you don't have, you know, I mean, if they keep calling and doing that, I'm not going to keep answering. You know, I'm at some point, I'm just going to stop accepting those calls. You know, or maybe send a text and say, missed your calls, I've been busy. You know, if it's a friend, it's like, okay, if you call to chat, you know, here's when I'm available, but it's probably not a friend. It's probably someone that you've been doing things for. So, you know, it's just don't answer. You know, and that's hard for some people. You know, I think some of us really feel like, you know, the phone rings, either we have to answer it right away or we have to get back to people in a certain amount of time. And the truth is we don't. We need to do what's best for us and the people and situations that are most important in our lives. And we can't be everything to everybody. And I think that's such a strong thing with women, is a lot of us are taught that we need to be everything to everybody. And that if we're not, we're somehow a failure. And we're not. You know, saying no to somebody and meaning it is not a failure. Ask a man. Okay, ask a man, say in a corporate environment, if saying no to things makes him a failure. He'll tell you no. Well, see, if I don't say no to certain things, I won't get any respect.
Interesting.
You know? It's that difference again between being liked and being respected. And yes, we want our friends to like us. Okay? But we just have to it's important not to try to replace respect with liking. Because, you know, we need a balance. We need a balance in our lives, you know, and we need more than other people respecting us. We need to respect ourselves. And if I set a boundary and I keep going back on it and let somebody get away with it, I lose respect for myself if I had it to start with. But if I didn't, setting the boundary and sticking to it can help me to gain it. You know, I'm doing something that requires inner strength. I'm looking out for myself. I'm doing the right thing, you know. But if I don't, then I'm not going to respect myself.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing that came to mind too, as you were speaking, is if somebody has a real hard time and doesn't like your no and setting that boundary, and they keep on, like, the relationship just gets soured because of that, maybe they are not a person you want in your life. They weren't there for the right reasons.
Exactly. Okay. That brings me to something really wonderful, because I believe that better boundaries make better relationships. Okay. Now, people think of boundaries as pushing people away. They just think of them as a no. Okay. But first of all, not every boundary is a no. Some of them are, I won't do this, but I will do that. You know, not every boundary is a hard, cold no to everything. But even when it is no, you can't treat me. No, I won't drop everything on 10 minutes notice and drive you to whatever. No, you know, we can go on and on. But, you know, we think of them as being bad for relationships. They're not. When a boundary is delivered reasonably gracefully, okay, yes, it's bad for a relationship when you crap on someone, when you insult them with it, or that's not good for your relationship. But when you do it, the other thing about boundaries is that boundaries are about respect, both for you and for the other person. So the boundary that you choose has to do with respecting yourself, and how you express the boundary has to do with respecting the other person. So if you are respectful in the way that you set a boundary, and the boundary is appropriate to your value system, that in itself that boundary is not going to make the relationship worse. It may show you something you didn't realize. It may show you that the relationship isn't as good as you thought. But that's showing you what reality already was. It's not making it worse. And if you're dealing with someone who cares about you, it can make it stronger. Because if you didn't set the boundary, and you did what they wanted, what's going to happen? You're going to resent them, right? You're going to resent that person for taking advantage. They should know better. They shouldn't take, they shouldn't take advantage of your good nature. Well, stop handing your good nature over. You're responsible for looking after that, not them. Even your good friends, they're not responsible for not asking for something you don't want to give. They're responsible for respecting your no when you give it to them.
Right. They can't be minded and know
No, exactly.
what your truth is.
Yeah. And all the little things that, we get to know people over time, and actually people get to know us better through those boundaries. Oh, that matters to her. Okay. Oh, she's not comfortable with a little white lie. Okay. So that tells somebody a few things about you. Not only does it tell them not to ask you to lie again, but it tells them that if there's some situation that's uncomfortable, they might not want to try a white lie with you, because if you find out, it's going to affect your relationship, because you violated their values. Mm-hmm. So, these are good things to know about our friends and people close to us.
Yeah.
So, boundaries show people things about us. They tell people how we're willing to be treated and how we're not. And those are all important things in any good relationship, whether it's a relationship based on love, based on respect, based on, whatever. But any good relationship can handle boundaries. Mm-hmm. It can. And if it can't handle respectful boundaries, then it's not a good relationship.
Yes.
And like you said, maybe that's not someone you want in your life. Or if you're stuck with them in your life, maybe you don't want so much of them.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly where my head went. It's like, well, with family, it's a little bit more complicated, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but you can, you control what you can control, and, what you're willing to control.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can control it. You can cut them out. But, that can also go against your values and not be what you want to do. But you can still, you find that balance.
Yes. Yeah. And I can see where, especially if with family, like figuring out what that new paradigm looks like and where you set the boundaries, and how, because the other person will have to adapt, if you're going to continue to have a relationship with them. And I can see that could take some iterations of figuring that out and being consistent with where you draw the line, which makes me think of one of the other questions I wanted to ask you is, should our boundaries be firm or can they be pliable?
It depends. So yes, they can be pliable at times. A lot of it depends on who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with someone reasonable and who cares about you, then often your boundaries can be pliable. When it's your good friend or your spouse or whatever, someone that you trust and who has your best interests at heart, then you don't need rough and tough boundaries. You don't need to put up a brick wall. When you're dealing with someone whose purpose appears to be to take advantage of you, being pliable just sets you up to lose your boundary. You just slide down that slippery slope, and pretty soon you're back at the bottom. So if you're dealing with someone who's not respecting you or not likely to respect you, you've seen, then you need you need firmer boundaries. And of course, some situations require them, like if it's really, really important to you. But then if that's with someone you care about, you explain why you can explain why the boundary is so strong. Mm-hmm. So it's very much, it's an art more than a science. Boundaries they're really about, it's interesting because boundaries are very much related to power. And I think that's one of the reasons that as women we're uncomfortable with, because we're not taught to be powerful.
Right.
We're taught to make other people, to be nice. And when you set a boundary and stick with it, you are, you're in your, that is an expression of power. And power can be, there's nothing inherently good or bad about power. It's all in, it's in the details, right? Mm-hmm. But that's important. That's, having that power is really important. And boundaries are really about the appropriate and effective use of that power. So, a boundary that's well chosen and that's delivered in a way that suits the situation and the people involved. I mean, that's a great thing. It's like you're exercising your power in a really healthy way.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious how long it took for you to feel like you got the hang of the boundary thing, because going from a constantly pleasing everybody else to starting to step into your own power.
I started to see at the end of my 20s, I did a bunch of personal and spiritual growth things. And that was where I really started to see, oh my gosh, this is not where I want to be. I mean, it took me decades. That's the simple answer is it took me decades. I saw, I started to see how much I wanted to please other people. And I saw that meant I wasn't being myself. That it's like I was editing. If someone asked me a question, I was editing my answer before it came out of my mouth. So what did I think they'd want to hear? Not that I did that all the time, but I did it often. Especially around new people I didn't know so well. Mm-hmm. Like I started to realize, and it was a subtle thing, I didn't realize it for a long time, how much I cared about how I appeared to them. And, it was like, I remember that realization. I remember that much more clearly than how I got into doing boundaries as my focus, like in my work, That moment, I can still remember it, of realizing, oh my God, everything I just said, it was like, it's not that it wasn't true, but it was the aspect of the truth that I thought would go over well. Okay, so I wasn't lying. You see, that's why when I say it was subtle, I wasn't lying. Mm-hmm. I wasn't, I wasn't making things up. I wasn't just saying whatever.
But your gut knew it wasn't your whole truth.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the core of it. It was stuff off to the side where I thought there was overlap. Mm-hmm. It was stuff that I thought they'd agree with. And I mean, that, for someone like me, some people don't mind that so much, but for me, being true to myself is so important. I've had people who meet me comment on how sincere I am. And it's funny because when they made that comment, I actually didn't understand. Because so much of the world today, I didn't understand. I knew what sincere meant, but I was kind of surprised by it. And because if you go back to before I realized what I was doing there, when I wasn't in that state, say like talking to you about this topic, right? If I was talking to someone about something that I was into, all of that went away and it was just me, and people would comment on that. Oh, and I guess so many people in the world are trying to impress other people, are trying to be something either slightly or very much different than what they are. And it hurt. It really, and the worst thing about it is we do it because we want people to like us. But if what people like is just the image we're projecting, then they're not really liking us, are they?
No.
So it's a guaranteed way to feel like nobody really likes the real you because you've never even shown it to them.
Right. And it's exhausting to be constantly trying to guess what you think people are going to like. Ugh.
Yeah, it is. And I suspect I never noticed that because I have a fast mind. Okay, so I didn't notice the exhausting part so much because my mind is very quick. Mm-hmm. And I can do that. I can suss out enough about people pretty quickly, and do that. But what I did notice was that kind of uncomfortable feeling, like that. Because in there, even though I wasn't acknowledging it directly, was that fear, that the truth wouldn't be accepted. That if I said what I really thought, that they wouldn't like me. Mm-hmm. It took a long time, but it's like, okay, so what if they don't like me? Mm-hmm. Not everyone's going to like me. I'm an author. Let me tell you, I know not everybody likes me because I can go to my book reviews. Okay, I can go onto Amazon and look at the reviews. I can see all this wonderful stuff, and then I see this one who basically calls me an idiot.
Mm.
You know? And I still feel it. I get over it pretty quickly, but I feel it.
Sure.
You know?
How could you not? You're human. That's
exactly. And not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone's going to agree with me. But if I go for agreement instead of expressing who I am, I'll never be happy.
right. Yes. And it would be a shame for your work to not be out in the world of your truth to serve the people that it does resonate with.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I figured out along the way was, even if I think something is controversial, I should say it anyway, because that's my truth. And if that doesn't work for someone, then okay, maybe we're not the right match. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's really okay.
Definitely.
Not everyone has to agree with me. Not everybody has to think that I'm brilliant. Not everybody has to like me. That's okay. I mean, I'd prefer that they like me and that they think I'm brilliant and all of those things, but if they don't, well,
Mm-hmm.
life goes on.
Yeah. And especially for moms, I think there are so many areas in which we're trying to please a lot of people, trying to please our children, trying to please the school, the other, the parents at the playground, or, because there's so much judgment around moms. And I would love for you to dig into some of the areas where we could do a better job of holding boundaries as moms.
One of the places, okay, everybody talks about, like you gotta look after your family time, and you've gotta, we know all the classic, you gotta make sure your kids are safe and all of those things, But the boundaries for me, I think one of the big boundaries that people don't talk about that much with moms is protecting yourself and your kids from toxic people. Okay? Mm-hmm. From people who make you or your kids feel like you're not good enough the way you are. Mm-hmm. Okay, if are people who do that, they need to be called out when it happens, so that kids can see that that's not an okay way to treat people, and that it's not the truth either. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big boundary is that toxic people. Now, if we have toxic people in the family, that's hard.
Yes.
Yeah. But we have to find our ways to do it. And yes, it won't be perfect. And that's okay, because we don't have to be perfect. But we have to, that's a really important boundary, is, either not being around them or say, okay, we're around them, to set specific boundaries about what's not okay. And when those lines are crossed, it's like, we're leaving them. Mm-hmm. Or it's not okay to talk to my kids that way. Now, are you, do you want to stop that, or do we need to go? Do you need to leave? Whatever, depending on, just what's it going to be. And I think that's really important, and to model that for our kids. Because we're showing them what's okay. Because what we accept and what we don't, we're teaching them what's okay and what isn't. And we're teaching them, indirectly, we're teaching them about themselves. I mean, if it's okay for someone to make them feel like they're not good enough, then maybe they aren't good enough, right? I mean, what are they supposed to think? What am I supposed to think if my mom or my dad just sits there and tolerates somebody telling me I'm not good enough? It's probably their mom or dad, and there's a whole,
right.
As a parent, we understand that, but as a kid, I don't understand that as a kid. Mm-hmm. So I think that those are really important boundaries. So anyone who's sending that message, you're not good enough the way you are. And the other thing I would say that we forget to set boundaries around sometimes is time for ourselves. I mean, parenthood is it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's, at least as a kid, it is, possibly more exhausting than trying to please people and, second guess what they want, because it's like, you just never know. I mean, all kinds of things just come at you. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's like that whole thing with the, you're on the plane and you have to get your own oxygen mask first before you can put it on, so you don't pass out before you. Right. It's the same, except it's not oxygen, but it can be as important as oxygen. That amount of time doesn't have to be a lot. It depends on the person. But we really need to take that time for ourselves to and to not just time, but to give ourselves what we need. It's important to find out what nourishes us or what makes us happy, what is it that does that for us, and to give ourselves some of that, to set aside a little time for us to have whatever it is that works for us, to make ourselves important too. Mm-hmm. And that's for two reasons. One is because if we don't, we can't be there for our families properly.
Right.
The other thing is that when we don't, what are we teaching our kids, especially our daughters? If we don't look after ourselves, what are we teaching them? We're teaching them not that women don't need to look after themselves. That it's all about everybody else. Mm-hmm. And then when your daughter grows up and does that, and it breaks your heart, it's like, well, but where did she learn it? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really important too. Is to set that example and to respect ourselves that way.
Right. It's hard to do it if you're not modeling it yourself. It's hard to teach it to your children if you're not modeling it yourself.
Exactly, because you know what, you can tell them all the words, but they watch. They learn so much more from what we do, don't they? So, it's the classic it's the classic line of what a foul mouth, where did you learn that? Well, you said it yesterday. It's that idea. It's like they're going to do what we do, not what we say. So we better think about what we want for them and live that.
Yeah. Amen. Any final words of wisdom before we close out? Anything we hadn't touched on that you think is important to share?
I guess the one thing that I want to say about boundaries is that it seems really hard to set boundaries. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's actually often easier than we think. Mm-hmm. If you're dealing with people who care about us, that's the hardest time for me, to say something to someone I care about. It can still take me a really long time to get there. And I know, like the last time I did it, it was fine. You know what I'm saying? There was no problem. It was it was all me. So we put up a lot of barriers. We worry about things, or we just get scared. We don't even necessarily have to have thoughts with it. It feels scary. Mm-hmm. But if we take we can do it to get better at it, we can do it in small steps. And so, and start where it's safe, where it feels safest. And as we build that up, two things happen. One is that it gets easier. And the other thing is that we start to feel better about ourselves. Because I promise anyone who hasn't been, look, as a mom, I can't imagine having a life where you don't need to set boundaries. There are people who don't need to set a lot of them, but I just can't imagine a mom really being on that list much. So if a mom hasn't been setting them, then she probably hasn't been respecting herself. And when you start to respect yourself, you feel so much better. And I talked about that difference between like and respect. Oh, but people can like you, until you don't do what they want. And then you find out it wasn't you they liked anyway. Mm. Okay? It was the things you were doing. It was the fact that that you were at their beck and call. That's all they liked. It had nothing to do. And what matters more than how they feel about you is how you feel about you. Because really, whose opinion impacts us most day to day? People can only hurt, even if somebody says, oh, you're being selfish, you this, you that, they can really only hurt you more than momentarily if you buy into it.
Yes.
It's only when you believe it that it hurts. So what I want to say about boundaries is they're easier than you think. They're worth it. They're so worth it in the long run because learning to respect yourself is one of the most important things that you can ever do for yourself and that you can model for your kids. And boundaries are all about all of that.
So beautifully stated. I love how you wrapped it all up in the end there. I have one final question for you. And how do you connect to your true you?
I connect through music.
Me too.
When I'm not feeling myself, I put on music that works for me. It depending on what I need. It can be a real sappy ballad. It can be something with a lot of energy to it to pump up the mood, whatever. But that's how I get in touch with my true. In the moment, if I feel myself out of it, that's about deep breaths, whatever. Just kind of refocus. But the real powerful one for me is music, definitely.
I love that. Thanks so much for being here, Steph. Such great
Thank
words
you.
of wisdom that I know you're going to help a lot of moms with. So thanks again.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.